So what's the difference between knowledge and wisdom? Hello again, everyone. I'm Eli's dad with Project Eli, where we educate, lead, and inspire. And today we're going to explore the difference between knowledge and wisdom. And I'd like to point out to you that I've already done a couple of videos on knowledge versus wisdom way back in the beginning when I started this. I'm going to try and include those links in the description box below. They're kind of a neat thing to do. It's kind of a little checklist to check to see how you're doing. And I was inspired to do this because one of the people that I work with in the financial arena, part of my business, he and I agree on a lot of different things. We love sports and so on and so forth. Financial things, obviously, we have a mutual interest. But politically speaking, we're kind of on opposite spectrums. And he sends me all these philosophical emails. Yes, Eli, I still get emails. He sends me these philosophical emails, and I find some of them very interesting. And this particular email had a lot of different things on it I found inspiring. I thought I would share them with all of you. The first one is, no matter how educated, talented, rich, or cool you believe you are, how you treat people ultimately tells all. Eli, it's so important to treat even the lowest people on the ladder with respect. One of the reasons that's important is because everybody, and remember this, money's important, I recognize this, but people like to feel that they are important. What their contribution is to the whole is important. Help them feel that way. It doesn't cost you anything. It'll help you get along better. It'll help you be more persuasive with people. Not only that, but it's much more pleasant to be that way instead of trying to be the big shot. You know, I've had people that I've worked with when I was on my way up that just thought like, oh, I know so much more than he knows, and treated me like I was, you know, some sort of lower being. You know, I took note of that. I made sure that when I got into that position of authority, that I did not act that way. That's how a leader becomes beloved, is when the leader treats people with respect. That's always a key thing to remember. And I believe Muhammad Ali agrees. This is a quote from Muhammad Ali. I don't trust anyone who's nice to me but rude to the waiter, because they would treat me the same way if I were in that position. You know, Muhammad Ali wasn't necessarily a particularly educated man per se, but I'll tell you something. He certainly knew people. He certainly knew how to draw people to him. He certainly knew how to be a leader. And certainly one of the most charismatic people that you'll ever know. And people copy him all the time. You know, he was the first one to do what we like to call trash talking now. At least in my memory, he was the first one that was blatant about it. I am the greatest, all right? But he always did it with his tongue in cheek. He would have little poems, little poetry, you know, and you know, he had his confidence, he had his belief, he had his strengths, he had that charisma, and he had that confidence with a cause instead of being cocky without a cause. Do you know people that are cocky without a cause? They're not the ones that I really like to bond with. So anyway, keep in mind that the way you treat people, you're going to meet the same people on the way up and on the way down. And a lot of times you're going to find you're going up and down that ladder in life. You go up, you go down, you go back up again. That's one of the things that's very important, is when you fall down, pick yourself back up, and you'll keep meeting these same people on that same ladder. In life, it is important to know when to stop arguing with people and simply let them be wrong. Now, sometimes when you're in a discussion with someone and they have the exact opposite view, as a matter of fact, like this gentleman I was telling you about who sent me these things, we have opposite views on a lot of things. But one of the points that we both make, because I like to think we both have a little bit of wisdom, is we don't bring up those topics. We have enough things in common that we can agree upon, where we can have discussions, where we can have, you know, we like to tell jokes, so on and so forth. He tells me things he heard, what he saw, so on and so forth. I share the same thing with me. He kids me a lot. I refer to him as the Great One. His name is Francisco, and I refer to him as Great One. How are you today? But one of the things that we never do is we never talk about the political things where we disagree. It's just not worth the effort. And you know, if somebody happens to be seeing two people arguing with each other and you think to yourself, well, I am so right and this person is so wrong, that person's a fool. Somebody that's watching from the outside and sees two people arguing says to themselves, there's two fools over there, not just one. So keep that in mind. Don't trust everything that you see, because even salt looks like sugar. You know, I mention this especially to you now, Eli, because you're at a very impressionable age, you know, in high school and pretty soon going to college. And one of the things that people do is they take things at face value all the time. And you have to look a little bit deeper. And this is especially true with young people, and you know, they judge people on their looks. And I'm not just limiting it to young people, all right? Older people do the same thing as well. But one of the things you have to remember is that anybody can come up with a brilliant idea. And the other thing is people tend to be so superficial on the surface when they're meeting people. Oh, he has a little bit of a big nose, he's got big ears, so on and so forth. Stop and give a deeper look into people, into situations, and don't make snap judgments. Remember, we've all been quote-unquote programmed to believe certain things. And if you want to get on in this world, and if you want to make progress in this world, and if you want to be a major contributor in this world, one of the keys to that is to be able to recognize and understand other people's points of view, not take things at face value all the time, and try and work with people, because a lot of times you're going to find that's a pretty interesting philosophy. I may want to embrace that. The next quote is from Albert Einstein. A ship is always safe at shore, but that's not what it's built for. Well, you know, in society today, with the school system today is built for safety. You advance from kindergarten to first grade to second grade, so on, all the way through high school, then you go to college. I mean, it should take you 1 year to go from the third grade to the fourth grade. Everything is all laid out for you in a very safe way so that you have confidence all the way. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, what they don't teach you is that you're not built entirely for safety. If you don't take risks, if you don't go out there, if you don't accept challenges, great things are not going to happen. All you're going to get is little safe things. That's all you're going to get. And if you want to achieve great things, you have to take some great risks. And that involves having ideas that other people say, boy, that's a screwy idea. But if you can envision it, if you can see it, if you can feel it, taste it, touch it, if it becomes part of you, you can make it happen. Nothing happens on this planet without people having the idea first. And every idea that comes first is always met with ridicule, because people, if nothing else, love to cling to the status quo. You know, I'll give you a quick example of that. Eli, many years ago, I would say this was in the early 1980s, a group of people came to our office and started talking about this new thing that they had, and they called it the World Wide Web, the internet. And they showed us, well, you're going to be able to like type things, send messages, they're going to go from here to there very quickly. And we looked at it, and on the way home we all said, boy, that thing's never going to take off. I amongst them. Ideas, Eli, you have to risk failure with your ideas. You have to risk failure with your actions. That's the best way you're going to learn. And if you're not willing to take risks, you're not going to be able to achieve great things. This is a key point. A smart person knows what to say. A wise person knows whether to say it or not. You know, a lot of times, especially, and this isn't just limited to people your age, but it's especially people your age, Eli, people, teenagers, people in their early 20s, you know, very passionate about things, learning new things. I'm passionate about it. And, you know, but it's not limited to people your age. Sometimes people do things that make you angry. And you just want to blurt out something that the shortest distance ever measured is the distance between your brain and your mouth. Boom! It goes in your brain, immediately comes right out of your mouth. You're going to find that people that are quote-unquote wise have a little rule that they follow that I've embraced, that was taught to me. And that rule is this: when someone says something that is hurtful or makes you angry, don't have a knee-jerk reaction, because what happens is your emotions are the thing that's doing the talking instead of your logic. Give yourself some time to let this steam go out of the tea kettle, so that it's just water in there and it's just sitting there, and then you can, it reaches its level, and then you can do some logical thinking. Now, that's not to say that 24 hours from now you're not going to have exactly the same emotional, anger, but if you have that, if you give yourself that logical time, it gives you a chance to see the other person's point of view. It gives yourself a chance to put together some logical sentences, and it also gives the other person a chance to cool down as well. So when you're there and you're talking, and remember, people listen best when there's calm. When there's very high emotion or anxiety or feelings, people tend to be very, very tight, very, very protective, and they're not very open to listening. So one of the rules of thumb that I have is always give myself, at the very minimum, overnight to quote-unquote sleep on it, but I generally like to give 24 hours before I respond to something that I feel is wrong. Okay, notice the difference between respond and react. If you go to the doctor and the doctor gives you some medication for some particular ailment or illness that you have, and then you go back and the doctor says, oh, you responded to the medicine. And if something bad happened, you broke out in a rash, what did you do? You reacted to it. So let's not create any rashes. Let's not react. Let's respond. A wise person knows to bite their tongue for a certain period of time and mull things over and figure out a game plan that's going to help things move forward. Now, many people think that patience is a sign of weakness. I think that's a mistake. It's anger that's a sign of weakness, whereas patience is a sign of strength. Now, that fits into what we just talked about, but even more importantly than that, when you have a particular goal, dream, ambition, so on and so forth, and you're not getting it done, but you can see little progress, you can still see yourself reaching that end goal because you feel it in your gut, you know it's there. Patience is the same thing, as far as I'm concerned, as courage, because it's easy to say, well, I'm giving up, not happening, I'm giving up. But you know what? Patience means you have the ability to go to a new starting line and start again for something that is worthwhile. Now, sometimes you do have to say, all right, this isn't working. But remember that remember that failure is feedback telling you you need to approach your issue from a different angle. Wise people know that. They don't take failure as an ultimate end to a situation. They take it as a stepping stone to achieving their magnificent obsession. So keep this in mind. Patience is a major virtue, and what happens is when little things go wrong, sometimes we get angry, we want to put our fist through the wall, we want to hit somebody. Show some patience. That's maturity. More importantly, it's wisdom. A saint was asked, what is anger? And he gave a beautiful answer. His answer was, it's a punishment that we give to ourselves for somebody else's sake. Have you ever been driving in your car and somebody cuts you off? And you go, ah, and you want to extend one of your fingers in that person's direction? That happens to everybody. And not only that, but you take that anger with you when you get into the office or you get into work and you're saying, you should have seen what this guy did to me. The guy that cut you off doesn't even know that you exist now. It's forgotten, it's gone. You're letting that person's anger affect your attitude. How smart is that? One of the things you have to do is you need to have some transformers that transform your personal attitude from one of anger to one of calm, where you're thinking about certain things that change your dynamic so that you're back in a positive space. And it takes time, okay? It's like a mourning period. You know, when someone dies, you know, you can't just like go out and start telling jokes. That's not the way it is. You have a period of, you know, where you're feeling bad and a loss and so on and so forth. And that's true with anything. But you need to get over it. You need to get over it. And that's true, you know, anger, mourning, situations like that. You know, life goes on. You know, you need to pay, you know, give them their due, particularly the mourning, all right? Give them their due. But anger is something we need to kind of learn to extinguish more quickly. So wise people don't let someone else's attitude or someone else's actions affect their attitude. You're the person that's in control. Always keep that in mind. Any fool can know. The point is to understand. Once again, Albert Einstein. To me, this is one of the biggest things that separates knowledge from wisdom. There's so many people out there with, oh, he's very knowledgeable, or she's very knowledgeable, he knows this, she knows that. But the thing is, how do you get that to work? How do you get the people to work with that concept? How do you get people to work with that idea? You know, there is certain, you know, and you see this in sports all the time. You'll have like a particular team, and the team isn't doing very, very well. As a matter of fact, years ago that happened with the Los Angeles Lakers. I don't remember who the coach was, but they had a team with Shaq and Kobe on it. And the team was they were like incredibly mediocre. And then the ownership decided to hire Phil Jackson. In 1 year, they went from being mediocre nobodies to becoming the NBA championships. The NBA champions. You know, the other coach knew the X's and O's. Phil Jackson knows the X's and O's. But here's the point. There's more to just knowing the X's and O's. It's understanding the chemistry. It's understanding how to divvy out the different assignments so that each person is utilizing their strength instead of exposing their weaknesses. This is one of the things that's, you know, critically important about leadership. You know, any fool can know, but the point is to understand how it works. Here's another quote from Einstein. I feel the day will pass when technology will surpass our human interaction. The world will have a generation of idiots. Now, I wouldn't go so far as Einstein does on this, but I'm pretty close to it. As you know, if you've watched any of my other videos, one of the things that annoys me greatly is people are always sticking their heads into their phones. That's all they do. When there's people all around them, there's a chance to interact. We're losing humanity. We're losing our humanity. Talk to people. Share with people. Enjoy other people. I know the phone is a communication device. There's no question about that. And you're talking to people, but sometimes all you're doing is distracting yourself by playing this game or looking at this or looking at that, looking at Facebook. And I understand all that, and I understand technology, and I'm not, I use the tool myself. I communicate. Eli, communicate with you. You taught me Snapchat. I'm learning. I'm sticking with it. However, don't lose the human touches, the human skills that are necessary to interact with people. Years ago, when computers first came out, people that were computer people, computer nerds, would always use the word, well, this one interfaces, he interfaces with this, he interfaces with that. I used to hate that word. Right? This is an interface. How about we're talking? We're communicating. All right? You don't have to interface. People need to talk more, they need to understand more. And there's no substitute. It's so much better when my friend calls me on my birthday than it is to receive a text or a note in Facebook. I want to talk to the person. Have some humanity. It matters. It matters to people. when the debate is lost, slander becomes the tool of the losers. And that was said by no less a human than Socrates. So I guess times haven't changed all that much. When someone sees that what they're saying is wrong, what they start to do is they start to say bad things about the person. Come on. All right? Let's stick on topic. Let's not slander. Let's not belittle, as I like to say, as somebody said to me once, I thought it was pretty cute. You have to belittle to belittle. You know, let's not do that. Let's not slander. Let's have arguments, you know, discussions that are fact-based and not belittling somebody. That doesn't add to anything. Now, you know, when Albert Einstein met Charlie Chaplin, he said to Charlie Chaplin, and I quote, "What I admire most about you, Mr. Chaplin, is your art and its universality. You don't say a word, and yet the world understands you." And then Charlie Chaplin looked at him and he said, "You know, that's true. But your fame, Dr. Einstein, is even greater. The world admires you when nobody understands you." Kind of an interesting thought. Here's Charlie Chaplin, the king of silent pictures, very creative person. No words are being spoken, yet by the actions, people are able to understand him. Albert Einstein, who in the big picture is explaining things, that A works because of B times C times D, whatever, his formula is very complicated that the typical person couldn't understand, but he himself was beloved. You know, Einstein is one of my favorite people and one of the people that I like to model, not that I'm a scientist or anything, but the way that Einstein thinks. He had a certain way of thinking. He spent a lot of time, he would just sit down in the middle of the day and lie down and just start thinking. Stop what he was doing and just start thinking. What does that tell us? It tells us that if you want to be a great thinker, you need to think more. You need to set aside time for that. He would take long walks. He would go walks on. He would spend time alone. He would play the violin. It would give himself time for some quiet thinking time. I preach this all the time, Eli. It's critically important. Budget yourself some time every day for quiet thinking time. If you want to be a good thinker, you need to think more often. Einstein was a great thinker. And the same thing is true. You see this with Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. They devote a lot of time to reading. What do you think when they're reading and they see these ideas? It gives them ideas, input, ideas, thinking, thoughts, instead of just reacting to distractions and Joey sent me this email and Freddie sent me this Facebook message. And stop and give yourself some quiet thinking time to plan, to reflect, and to center yourself. Get rid of some of that anger. Put yourself in the other person's shoes. Try and understand. You can only do that when you give yourself some quiet thinking time. Our thought for the day on knowledge versus wisdom is knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad. And because we will never end a meeting on a philosophical note, because we're very wise, let's get out there and charge! I'm Eli's dad.